This video is intended to be a brief overview for the process of completing an 82-1 form and the teacher-specific rating calculations, including the ability to add in PVAAS value-added scores. So let's take a quick look. I'm logged in as a fake building principal. I'm in a fake example middle school, and I'm going to go down to this fake teacher called Maddie Lee. I'm going to open up Maddie Lee's user summary page. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and go to the 82-1 form. And I'm going to create a new one pretending to complete a final summative form for the 15-16 school years. So I choose 15-16 and I click begin. The system then presents to me the 82-1 form, and all I need to do is fill out all the yellow fields. So I'll put in today's rating date. It's the actual date I'm doing the form. That's really up to you as to what date you include there. Make sure that the building is identified correctly, and make sure I mark off that it's an annual summative form. So section 1 is a teacher observation and practice. I'm going to include my 4 ratings for the 4 domains. Obviously, when filling this out, I want to look back at previous data and evidence. You can do that very easily by clicking on the people icons. So if I click on this person icon, this is going to show me that there was a formal observation done on 9/30 for Maddie Lee, and there was another one done on 4/26. The ratings that are presented are the ratings that the supervisor gave the teacher in domain 1. So overall, I can see the scores are roughly in 2, a couple 3s, a couple 1s. So as a supervisor, I'm going to indicate a summative rating of a 2 for planning and preparation. I can do the same thing for the next 3 ratings. In addition to looking at completed supervisor ratings for formal observations or differentiated observations, I can also go and look at any completed anecdotals or walkthroughs for Maddie Lee. So I click on this icon up here next to her name, and I can see that this principal completed 3 walkthroughs for Maddie Lee and 1 anecdotal note. For each one of these, I can view those and again use that as evidence and justification for the ratings in section 1. So I'm just going to quickly add in some ratings as an example, and then so far, Maddie Lee has earned a 2.3 in this section. 2.3 floats to the bottom, and 2.3 is now 50% of her overall score. The next section is the building level score. I'm going to mark that Maddie works in 1 building. I'm going to reference those SPP scores. So I click on this building icon. It'll open up a chart, and these are the SPP scores for these example buildings for the 15-16 school year. How did these scores get in here? School district admin users have the ability, or portal managers have the ability to go into the back end of the software, click on the buildings tab, and they can add SPP scores for each building. When those are added for the appropriate school year, they will populate in this window so that supervisors can easily reference them and enter them. So Maddie's example middle school, it's 86.4. I'm just going to plug that in real quickly, 86.4. If Maddie did work in multiple buildings, I could click multiple buildings and enter the different scores for those buildings. Okay, moving on. We'll move over to section 3 and 4. Let's do section 4 first because that's the easiest one. This is elective rating or the SLO score. So right here is another quick view icon, and I can see that Maddie completed an SLO, and she scored a score of 2, proficient on that. So I'm going to look at that score and quickly enter it. And then I'm going to move on to the teacher-specific rating section, and I'm going to click on the teacher-specific rating calculator icon. When I click on that icon, up comes a pop-up window that shows you that within this section, which is 15% of the overall score, 15% right down here of the person's overall score, the supervisor actually has to consider whether any of these 4 pieces of data apply to that teacher. If they do apply to that teacher, then they have to determine the weighted percentage for that particular category and then put in a rating. So let's go through each one. The first layer of data that has to be considered is, does Maddie Lee teach in an area where they have student performance on assessment data? So that's PSSA data or Keystone data. Does Maddie Lee have a 3-year rolling average PVAAS score, a value-added score? Does Maddie Lee have students, 11 or more students according to state guidelines, that have IEP goals in their subject area and they're responsible? I believe the state did say that districts can change that N number from 11, but the guideline, I believe, was 11 from the state. And then lastly, does Maddie Lee have a locally developed school district rubric or an SLO score, which we already know she does. She scored a 2 on that. So to help principals be consistent in these weighted percentages, we allow school district admin users or portal managers the ability to build in preset default weighted percentages. And when those are built in, they can be accessed right up here by each supervisor. So essentially, when the supervisor gets to this section, they can say, okay, this particular teacher, which scenario do they fall under? Well, let's pretend for a second that Maddie Lee works in an area where she does have student performance, she does have a value added score, she does IEP progress, 11 or more kids, and she also has an SLO or LDR score. So if I click on that, you can see that those default percentages drop in. Now this is just an example on our example site, but that is essentially how it works if your school district admin user has built in those preset weighted percentages. So that's one example. So let's fill this out for this example. Um, we've decided that 2% is going to count towards the student performance on assessment. So how do I determine the rating? Well, I come over here to the ELP icon, and then I determine that I have to see how many of Maddie's students were proficient or advanced on that PSSA or Keystone exam. So let's pretend that 85% of those students were proficient or advanced for Maddie Lee. So we're going to fall into that category, which is going to give Maddie a 2.0. So we'll give this a 2. Okay, next up, value added. Does Maddie Lee have a value added score? There's a help icon here to give you some information. And right over here is a quick view icon, which will show you any PVAAS reports that have been uploaded by school district admin users. Again, we give school district admin users or portal managers the ability to take those PVAAS reports from the PVAAS system, upload them into PAETEP, and then they are made available to building principals and supervisors when they're filling out this form. So as a supervisor, I can quickly come in, I can click on one of these reports. It's going to open up a window. Let me just open this up. I'm going to see that PVAAS report that was downloaded and then uploaded into PAETEP. I'm going to look at that report. I'm going to find Maddie Lee's name. Now this is just an example, so Maddie's not actually on here. And the score that I'm looking for is a 0 to 3 scaled score, that PVAAS 3-year composite score. So let's just pretend that Maddie scored a 1.55 for that PVAAS score. So I can just simply close that window. I can go back to here and I can put 1.55 in there for that 3-year composite. Okay, progress in meeting IEP goals. We as a district have decided that's going to count 1% in this scenario. So how do I determine that rating? Well, I go to this help icon. There's some information there. There's actually a link to a guidance document on determining progress. But essentially, what you're doing is looking at those students and whether they're meeting their IEP goals, and their progress is either a 0, 1, 2, or 3. So let's just pretend that those students are doing really well, meeting great progress on their IEP, so we're going to click a 3 for that. Again, more information can be provided by clicking on that hot link to that article, which is an article provided by the state of Pennsylvania. And lastly, we're going to look at the LDR SLO score. So 2% has been added in as the weight. So we're going to look at Maddie's SLO score, which again, she scored a 2. Right there's a 2. I'm going to plug that in and give her a rating of a 2. The form does all the math for you. So Maddie has earned a 1.76 for this section, which is 15% of her overall score. To apply that score, I'm going to click Use Score. 176 comes in, 176 comes down, and is then applied. So all the numbers are in. Maddie's final earned points is a 2.16, which puts her in the proficient range. Notice that proficient is marked at the bottom. You would indicate satisfactory. You would also indicate professional employee or temporary employee. We'll pretend she's a professional employee. And then you have a couple options. You can save it and come back to it later. You can submit it so the teacher can view it and print it. And you can also print this at any time and get the appropriate signatures. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit and submit that off to Maddie. But the system checks to make sure I have everything filled out. I forgot to put an end date. So this is for the 15-16 school year. So maybe the end date is actually June 30th, 2016. So I'll put that date in, and then I can submit it off to the teacher. So that is how you fill out an 82-1 form, and also gives you some nuances of that teacher-specific rating calculator and how to incorporate those PVAAS scores. Real quick, let's go back to that form that was just created by this building principal. I want to go back into that teacher-specific rating calculator. Notice I'm opening up the form that was already submitted. I can still edit it if I need to make some changes, if something was entered as a mistake, so you can always edit it. But I wanted to go back into the calculator, so let me click edit so I can be able to edit this form. And let me go back to the teacher specific rating calculator, and just I wanted to show you another example. Let's say Maddie Lee was a high school teacher. So in this scenario, most of these layers of data do not apply. If Maddie's a high school art teacher, she wouldn't have student performance on assessment data, would not have value added data, and most likely would not have students with IEP goals in their discipline. So in that scenario, I would come up here and find the appropriate preset uh, percentages that would apply. So this would be a scenario where only SLO data apply. So watch, if I click on that, in comes the 15% only for that locally developed rubric. These can all be zeroed out or left blank. Um, doesn't matter, I'm not going to calculate because there's no weighted percentage. And again, I'm going to look at Maddie's SLO score, which is a 2, plug that in as a 2, and then it calculates the points. So 15% at a rating of 2 obviously gives us the 2. We click use score, and then you can see that not only did we use the SLO score for the elective rating 20%, but in this scenario, because Maddie's a high school art teacher, that SLO is also going to count an additional 15%. So 35% of this teacher's score is coming from their SLO in this scenario. Again, let's go back and look at another example. Let's say that maybe Maddie is a teacher that has not been teaching for 3 years. Maybe she teaches in an area that is assessed by PSSA or Keystone, so she would have student performance. Let's pretend that she does have IEP progress and SLO data, but there's no value added data. So I'm going to click on that. So there the percentages drop in. The district has decided 2.5. Obviously, value added does not count in this scenario. 2.5 for the IEP and 10% for the SLO. Again, I put in those scores. Let's just put in some scores so you can see how the calculations work. And now Maddie has earned a 2.08. Again, I just click use score. Just going through a couple examples to show you that if the school district admin, user, or portal manager builds these presets, this allows principals across the district to be consistent in how they're using the weighted percentages. So we've gone through a couple examples. In each scenario, we determine the teacher and the scenario that they fit. We pick that scenario, the percentages drop in, you add in your applicable ratings, you click use score, and then the form does all the math for you. Okay, hopefully that is helpful. If you need additional information on the teacher-specific rating calculator or adding in SPP scores or adding in PVAAS scores, you can always click on support. When you click on support, it takes you to the help desk. You can either search or you can look in Getting Started or FAQ. Here's an article right here. I'm going to click on that. This is an article for school district admin users on how to obtain their PVAAS scores from PVAAS site and how to upload them into PETEP so that they're available for their principals. Let's just go back. In addition to that, let's say I wanted information on SPP and how to add those building scores in. I just type in SPP. It searches the relevant articles. You can see here there's an adding building scores. I can click on that. And up comes an article that would show me as a school district admin user how to add in those SPP scores. And lastly, just to show you the nuances of the teacher-specific rating calculator, I'm going to go in here, teacher-specific rating calculator. There it is, the preset tool right there. I'm going to click on that article. And this is an article that can show school district admin users and supervisors how to build in those presets. And what I think is really important in this article is right down here, there is a worksheet that districts can use to look at those different scenarios for 15-16 and determine as a group the weighted percentages in each one of those scenarios. So for example, scenario 5 is a situation where the teacher does have student performance on assessment data, they do have value added data, they do have progress in meeting IDP goal data, and they do have SLO data. So if you write in those percentages, the school district admin user or portal manager can then go into the system, add in those presets, and they become available to the principals. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. If you ever have questions, never hesitate to click on support. You can reach out to us by clicking new support ticket. You can find articles that might be relevant, or you can simply email us at support@paetep.com. Thank you.